One of the most useful tools in ArcGIS is the field calculator. Allows us to do all kinds of manipulation of values in the attribute table. And we'll look at all the different ways we can format and change values, including using Python to do more complex stuff. One of the things that I find particularly useful is the ability to copy one column to another. Unfortunately, you can't just copy and paste a column like you can in, say, Excel. Instead, we use the Calculate Field tool. I can right-click on any column in the attribute table and open Calculate Field, select one of the other fields from the fields list, and this will then copy all the values to our column. But what if the column is in another table, like this Excel worksheet? Well, providing we have field values in common that we can use as a key, here we have borehole name, we can create a join between the table and the attribute table. So add the Excel table to the project and create a join on borehole name. Those joined Excel columns are now shown appended to the attribute table. They are now in effect part of the attribute table, so they'll be listed in the field calculator. So if I open the field calculator on this completion field, the Excel columns are shown in the fields list. I can just double click to bring the Excel column into the expression box. The question marks denote that this is a field and has the Excel worksheet name preceding the field name. Apply, and now all the values are copied from the Excel column to the completion field. And if we no longer need the Excel columns, we can remove the join to remove those columns, and we have updated our table. Anything that goes in the field calculator expression box will be copied into the field. So we could copy the values of two fields into one. So let's change the field to borehole ID. Going to create an ID value by combining both the country abbreviation field and the object ID, just by using the plus symbol. If the fields are text fields, they will be concatenated. If they were number fields, then it would be a calculation. The country abbreviation field is a text field, but the object ID is a number field. So we need to convert the numbers to text, or we would get an error. So we can use the Python str string function to convert to a string. A string is effectively the same thing as text. We can use most basic Python functions in the calculator, providing the expression type is set to Python. Now, when I apply the values from the two fields are concatenated into the target field, creating our ID. So the plus symbol is a concatenation operation when dealing with text, but the numerical operators will perform calculations when dealing with numbers. For example, if I want to convert these values from feet to meters, I select the same field, depth, and then multiply by 0.3048. Apply, and the calculation is made and the values are updated. I can change the units text column to meters by typing meters with double quotes. The quotes let the calculator know this is text. If there are no quotes, it will assume it is a number, so in this case we would get an error. Apply to populate all rows with meters. In the helpers list, there's a bunch of useful Python methods, functions, and code snippets we can use. These are here to save time, so we don't have to type them in. The helper items that start with a point are not Python functions, but Python methods. The difference is if the helper item starts with a point, it gets placed after the field or value. For Python functions, the field or value is placed within the parentheses for processing. For example, if we want to change all the depth units in this column to uppercase, we select the field from the fields list, and then double-click on the uppercase method from the helpers list to copy to the expression box. Now apply, and all the values are converted to uppercase. Let's look at another example. Say we want to round the decimal part of the meters values to 2 decimal places. We can use the Python function round. I'm typing it in as it's not listed in the helpers. The helpers list is not exhaustive, and this is a function and not a method, so we place the field from the fields list within the parentheses. This takes a second parameter, which is how many decimal places we want to round to. Once this is applied, all the values are rounded to 2 decimal places. Not all Python functions take a parameter. We could use the dateTimeNow function to populate the current time either into a text or date field. This function doesn't need any parameters in the parentheses. This is from the Python datetime library, so in this case we do need to import this function so the calculator can find it, and we do that in the code block. Then apply. Now the field is populated with the current date and time. We have looked at methods and built-in Python functions, but we can also define our own Python functions. To do this, we can use the Python code block. So we create our function in this box. First, we use the keyword def to define a function. Give the function a name. In this case, I'm going to call it classify, but it can be called anything. I'm going to create a parameter called value. Again, this can be called anything. It is just defining that this function needs to have a parameter in the parentheses. In this example, I'm going to update the field depending on the value of the parameter. We can use an if statement to do this. In the helpers, there are code snippets to help us, and I'll choose the if, elif, else. And we could just modify this. So in place of true, the condition for the first if statement I'm going to define is if the value is greater than 3000. And then the next condition, elif or else if, will only be executed if the first statement is not true. And here we return if the value is greater than 1500. And finally, we define the else. Else will execute regardless of the parameter value if all the other statements are false. And the first statement will return deep, the text deep, the second statement intermediate, and finally, if else is executed, will return the text shallow. So having defined the function, we can call it from the expression box. I just need to pass the parameter into the parentheses. In this case, I'm going to pass the depth field. So the function will evaluate the numbers from this field and return the text depending on the value. And as the field calculator will set the value to whatever is in the expression box, we will populate this field depth class with text values based on the numbers of the depth field. And more complex functions can be defined to manipulate values in a field. If we execute that, we see the field populated with those values returned from the function. So that is the Calculate Field tool, one of the most useful Pro tools. We can copy, allocate values, perform calculations, define functions. Really allows us to manipulate and process the attribute table any way we want. Watch out for more GIS and Pro content coming soon.